Hello and welcome to another episode of the Purple Theory podcast. Long-awaited return, the 2023 season kickoff extravaganza. I'm here. I'm your host, Parker Fleming, and I have with me alongside, as always, my co-host and my friend Grant McGalliard. Grant, it's been a long summer, man. It's been a little bit hectic for me. I'm sure it's been a little hectic for you as well. But we're back on the mic. How the hell are you?
Oh, Parker, I'm just doing splendid. It's so great to see your voice again, or to see your face again and to hear your voice. Just what a thrill. Excited for the 2023 college football season. Navy Notre Dame got me all just aglow in watching that terrible football game on a terrible field in Ireland. So I am ready for actual meaningful college football to start back up this weekend.
Yeah, last week was a lot of fun. And was some pretty crazy games, but yeah, we got a full slate here, not just the tasting menu, and it's exciting to have these games back on. Grant, right before we got on, not to date this podcast, I got to watch Nebraska's Jeff Sims throw an interception in the end zone instead of letting them throwing away and letting them score a field goal. So always fun there, and some good some good content to be had. And it's nice we got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think Monday too, we got a football game. So a nice long Labor Day weekend of that, which is always great. Grant, what are we going to do tonight? We're going to talk a little bit about our power ratings. We're going to talk a little bit into some games this weekend. I think, Grant, we should even do some let's just do some preliminary. What do we expect the Big 12 championship to look like? What do we expect? Some key names and players for the Big 12. Not necessarily offensive player of the year and defensive player of the year, but guys who are going to surprise us. I think that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I have categories for players, like I said, not necessarily offensive MVP, but just like, oh crap, that guy again, player of the year. There's a lot of those guys in the Big 12. So I can't wait to celebrate that.
In a past era, we might call something like this players you love to hate. But I think that taking an equal opportunity kind of Big 12 look at things, we'll call them, guys who are interesting to us. And that'll be kind of how we look at this year. Before we get into that, Grant, there's new I haven't listened, so I'm kind of putting myself out there on this. I need to do it. There's new Zach Bryan, and I believe there's new Turnpike Troubadours that have happened since we last talked. Have you listened to either of those?
I have not listened to the Zach Bryan. I have listened to the Turnpike. It's fine. I think the production is very stale. They brought in Shooter Jennings for this album, and he kind of denatured it a little bit. It's not as I'm not saying they sold out. I'm saying the production is just different. Mean Old Son has grown on me tremendously. I will say that.
That was my reaction when I heard their first. I think Mean Old Son was the first single they released off of this, and we kind of heard it. And I was like, "It's fine. It's gonna be okay." But yeah, I don't know. I haven't listened to any of the Zach Bryan. I've heard a little bit of the Turnpike, and Grant, I'm just wondering how I can find that old familiar feeling, the one that carried me so many years ago, right? And it sucks because here's this paradox, and I think we can talk about this on this podcast because, Grant, it's our podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want. I hate that some of my favorite artists make amazing music when they are whacked out, when they are drunk, when they are shitheads.
Yep.
And then they get sober, and then they move to Nashville and tell people how to live their lives. And it just kind of gets ruined there. It's really sad. And I'm happy that they're finding what they want, evidently, but it does obviously Evan Felker needed some help, right? I don't think that's a controversial statement, but it does stink that it feels I hate that that's what was causing your fastball, right? That's really the sadness here,
Isbell's really the only one that I think has managed to do both sides of that coin, getting real weird with the truckers. And then, oh, there you go. Thank you, Boots. Yeah. Just kicking it up. And he has gotten preachier a little bit, but I still think he's done excellent work since getting sober.
Yeah, well, I think, so obviously Southeastern was great. There's been good songs on every one of his albums. I think the latest one is Weather Vanes is okay, fine. Yeah. But I think King of Oklahoma is top 5 for him. I mean, I think that song makes me want to jump in front of a train. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a joke. For legal purposes, that's a joke. I'm not going to jump in front of a train. But yeah. So some good, interesting music. Nothing that's really captivated me, though. I'm giving both those guys lip service. Zach Bryan. Here's the thing about Zach Bryan. Here's my hot take before we get into this 5 minutes into this podcast. Okay. Zach Bryan's songs all sound the same. Yes. I like that song, but they're all the same song.
Yes, correct. And he's not that great of a songwriter. He's a really good singer.
Yeah.
The songwriting is like it's not his best attribute. I mean, I really like Condemned. Like that video of him doing it on the back porch, which he did for like the first 10 songs that he had. I'm a big fan of that. But everything else, you're right. It's okay. This is 3 albums of the same song for 40 minutes. And listen, if you like that, go off, King. But
yeah, it's hard to navigate there. Boots does say that Cast Iron Skillet slaps, and I actually disagree with that vehemently because I think Cast Iron Skillet is like a worse sanitized version of Outfit. It's like, hey, Outfit was a good song. Let me do another platitude-filled, mess. But it's catchy. I'll give you that. It's absolutely catchy. Let's talk a little football. Yeah, well. 32 says Golden Knights, tisk tisk. I'm looking at the score of that. Dude, 42-3. Yeah, Kent State's in a real bad situation, I think is what we can take away from that as opposed to taking anything away about UCF. Look, I like John Reese Plumlee. I think he's a good runner. You got to be in a Gus Malls on offense. They're at 42-3 on Kent State right now. John Reese Plumlee has 257 yards through the air and 90 yards on the ground. So have a day, JRP. Good first game as a member of the Big 12, even if it's not a Big 12 game.
I'm looking to see how we rated UCF. I had them as a 12 on the quarterback, so at least we respect Plumlee there, and you had them at an 11, so not too bad.
I had 11 because he got hurt last year and they kind of sucked. I don't know they have it behind it. So they did get a transfer in, though. We talked about that from from a G5 school, I think.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, they're up there. I don't think. I mean, 11 is highish. But yeah, I think I was tweeting about they're the Golden Knights until they win a game in the Big 12. That's all I gotta say. You gotta earn that. I think that there's a very clear path for John Reese Plumlee to be a top half quarterback in the Big 12 this year, which there's 14 teams. So he's experienced, whatever, but he runs well enough. If he can pass at a consistent level, not even amazing, just consistent and keep up that running ability, I think there's no reason he's not a top half quarterback in the conference this year. So
I mean, Iowa State doesn't even have a quarterback at this point. So congratulations.
Oh, dude. Okay, Iowa State's going to run that big kid out though. I'm so interested in that offense. I think I might actually be more interested in Iowa State without Hunter Deckers than I was with Hunter Deckers. And if you've heard me talk about Hunter Deckers, you know that means a lot. So really, really interesting there. Grant, let's I'm going to close the comments for a second. I want to read all these, but I'm so ADHD that I see them pop up and I just want to potpourri respond. We'll get to some of those here in a minute. Grant, last night I went through my power ratings. Can I read you the order that I finished in? And then I would love for you to read yours that you finished in, because we didn't finish the last 7, but I know we both kind of did power ratings. So I'm not going to give you numbers. That's too much. I'm just going to read you the order. Here's my order. Ready? Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, UCF, West Virginia, Houston, Iowa State, BYU, Kansas, Cincinnati. That's my 14 top to bottom.
Okay. We have similar lists, I think. Probably varying in a couple of spots. I have one team rated much lower than you do. But so here's where I net out, Parker. So my number 1 is Texas.
Yep. It has to be. It has to be. I hate it, but it has to be this year. Any kind of objective rating.
Yeah. There's too much talent on that roster for it not to be Texas. And then we'll see if Sark screws it up, but it's Texas. I have Oklahoma State and Kansas State tied for 2nd. And then I have a fairly go ahead. Yeah, I have a substantial cap.
I'm happy that that the Purple Theory podcast is high on Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State is undervalued. On one of my shows, I can't remember at this point, I think I took Oklahoma State plus 1,800 to win the conference. Was at those odds, I trust Gandhi, right? If he gets in the Big 12 championship game, I've made money there. So, okay, so you go Texas, Oklahoma State. That's kind of your top 3?
No, Texas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State.
Kansas State, excuse me. Sorry, yes. Yeah. Okay, that's your top 3. And then you've got a gap.
I got a gap. I got a 5-point gap down to Oklahoma.
Okay.
And
What
then,
about Oklahoma? What's your worst Oklahoma? Just because
yeah,
we didn't preview them yet. What's your worst Oklahoma unit?
I don't have their back end rated very highly, and I'm
Yeah.
not sold on their running back crew. It's not like the same level of
Yep.
athletes that they've had in the past. So they were a
Yeah.
little lower.
The word. I think I used the word mid last night to talk about Oklahoma's running backs.
Yeah,
So I'm there with you.
just extremely mid. Although their wide receivers continue to terrify me. Just demons at every level. Anyway, did I have Baylor, UCF? I have UCF tied with TCU.
Okay.
Then yeah, and then we go Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Kansas, and then Iowa State in a very distant last.
Interesting. You're way lower on Iowa State and way lower on Texas Tech than I am. I think
Yeah,
I'm lower on Texas Tech than most people, but interesting. You're lower on Texas Tech than a lot of folks there.
we talked about this when we previewed Tech. It just nothing about them really stood out to me, and I don't know. I really like Joey McGuire. I think that program is trending in the right direction, but I'm probably just like rubber banding against the hype that Tech's getting.
Yeah, it's kind of like I went in with like a lot of noise in my head and tried to filter out a lot of that noise and was like, I just don't love what I see here relative to everything else that's kind of out there in terms of
Yeah,
Texas Tech. So I get it. I totally understand it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So directionally, we're pretty close. We have some discrepancies. I'm a little higher on Oklahoma, a little higher on Texas Tech. I'm honestly a little higher on Iowa State, which is interesting to me. I think I'm going to put you on the spot here because we didn't talk about this at all. But
okay.
if you had to pick a team that had like the biggest uncertainty bars, like the widest range of possible outcomes, I know who that is for me, but who is that for you?
That's a really great question. So my initial answer, just thinking about it, might be Kansas. In terms of
Okay,
just
elaborate.
what's the biggest gap between like potential amount of wins that a team like Kansas could go 2-10 and I wouldn't be surprised, and they could go 8-4 and I wouldn't be surprised. Literally anything could happen with Kansas.
Yeah, I think in that sense, that's a pretty good answer of, just kind of all over the place. I think that's totally true. I think the answer for me is so Kansas, I have really low. So it's kind of one sided. Like, sure, I could
Yeah,
see them being a top half team. I have them ranked, tied with BYU just ahead of Cincinnati. But I think that the biggest range of outcomes for me is actually UCF.
okay,
I think they have a really strong identity on offense. They can run the ball not just with the quarterback, but with their running backs as well. Really strong rushing game. If they can drum up any kind of semblance of a passing game, that offense is going to stretch a lot of people in a way that I really don't think that Big 12 offenses or defenses rather have been stretched. So I think I said this on our podcast when we previewed them. Like they might be the most interesting team in the Big 12 to me this year. Just
yeah,
because if it goes right, I mean, you got Gus Malzahn as your coach. You got a ton of trade, like you've got a ton of talent transferring in, and you were really good last year when John Reese Plumlee was healthy. I could see this going a lot of directions, and so I think they've got a pretty big wide answer. Boots again chimes in and says that Oklahoma State has a lot of uncertainty. I agree, but I think Grant and I agree that Oklahoma State has positive uncertainty. Like
yeah.
I think it's just like how high is actually the ceiling. I think I have a pretty good sense of what Oklahoma State's floor is. And so they're pretty good. We're legally obligated to talk about Justin Kirkland when we talk about Oklahoma State, a freak of nature who I did not believe was benching as much as was told to me because the combine record is 52. And I believe I was told that Justin Kirkland of Oklahoma State benched 54 reps of 225, which is a whole freaking lot. But he did bench 40 a year and a half ago and was 40 pounds less. So he's definitely been cycling, and it's possible. It's possible. So we'll see what kind of havoc he wreaks on the defensive line there.
Do you know what?
Go ahead.
There's one more team that, just looking at this list, I have a hard time getting a read on, and for me, that's Baylor. Just because I think there's a world where Baylor could be so solid that they just like are the most solid 10-2 team and sneak into the Big 12 championship game. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think they have a super high floor, and I just don't know what their ceiling is.
They boringly consistent in the sense of like I think their offense last season, Shapen made some really good throws. They couldn't find the huge kind of like explosive plays, but they made a lot of consistent plays. And like you look at their season last year, a couple 1-score losses. That game against TCU, they should have gone for it on 4th and 3 from their own 30. Like they should have done what they did all along. They would have gotten it, or they would have TCU would have kicked the field goal with enough time for Baylor to have another shot. So a lot of I don't know. We'll see. But then on the flip side, like it's the first year with all of Aranda's guys. Jalen Petrie's not there. He wasn't there last year. We saw what that looked like. They had some transfers out. They're allowing a first-time play caller to call the defense. It's a little uncertain for me with Baylor there. I think very much this quest is on the edge of a knife for sure.
Okay. Fair. The time knife, if you will. We've all seen it.
Yeah, time knife. Let me segue before we talk about Big 12 championship and we talk about players and everything. Did come out today the team talent composite from 247. And so we do have a good idea of kind of the separation of talent. I'm just going to read everybody down off this list. Texas is first. Oklahoma is second so Texas 913, Oklahoma 884. TCU is third. They rank 19th in the nation, 768. And then you have to go a little bit of a gap. Like we've said for a while, TCU has consistently had the third best roster in the Big 12, even under Gary Patterson. That's not a new thing. And then you go Texas Tech. Please.
So I know we're not a TCU podcast anymore, but you and I are both very familiar with TCU. Is it going to be weird living in a world where like TCU has the best recruiting class in the Big 12 year in and year out?
I think we were primed for that. I don't think that was weird. I think we talked about that a lot. And I think it's certainly plausible. Now you look at their 24 and their 25 classes and you start to wonder, is that something they can sustain? Because those numbers aren't, necessarily great. Right. There have been tweets about, their 2025 class, but it's 2 recruits and we'll see. Open question. They've missed out on a couple guys. I think that's not unfair to say right now, but they still do have the third best roster in the Big 12. So I don't know if they'll be able to take care of that or sustain that. Texas Tech, huge jump, is fourth, 694. And then you have Baylor is 46th in the nation, 678. West Virginia is 50th, 666, behind Houston, we'll note, who was a G5 school going into this season. And then you have Cincinnati 663, just there, also a G5 school. So West Virginia recruiting like a good G5 school. Oklahoma State is 55th at 649. Iowa State 59th at 638. Kansas 61st in the nation, 632. Kansas State, surprisingly, 67th at 616 total roster points. BYU 72nd at 576. And then I believe we're missing
UCF. Are they in there somewhere?
I feel like I missed UCF because there's no way UCF is worse than Texas State and Kansas State. I think UCF's the one I missed. Perhaps dancing on West Virginia's grave. I missed UCF.
West Virginia stinks so bad. Like, there's no way Neil Brown makes
it. And their offensive line's going to be fine. But also, dude, if Rich Rod wins 8 games, there's nothing Neil Brown can do to save his job. Like, just objectively can't do anything.
Hold on. I was thinking about this the other day. Because, like, Neil Brown's going to have to, like you said, if Rich Rod wins games, Neil Brown's screwed anyway. But he has to get off to a good start this season. And he opens, he already lost to Pitt. Right? Or no, this is last year, sorry. But
yeah, they have Penn State. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
Really, really bad.
UCF is not on the team talent composite. I'm not crazy. They're just not on here. I went to the American Conference, went to the Big 12 Conference. They're just not on here. So that's an error. Okay, so I'm absolved. That's not my fault.
But what coach was it? Was it Indiana? Where the guy was like, we're not going to name a starting quarterback because we don't want to give our opponents an advantage. And it's almost like not naming a starting kicker. It was Indiana.
Indiana's not naming a starting kicker. Yes.
Because you don't want to give scouting to, I think, Penn State, who just want to beat the hell out of them. Or it's Ohio State the first week of the season. Sure,
yeah.
man.
Yep. Look, you got to protect your edges. I think that's totally it. Okay, Grant, what do you think about Big 12 championship? I know the schedules are unbalanced, so it doesn't correlate necessarily to just power ratings, because in the past, power rating directly would be, hey, here's who's here. I don't know if we've learned really well how to deal with the unbalanced schedule. But again, we're just looking at vibes. Off the top of your head, if you had to guess, what is your most likely, beginning your two most likely Big 12 championship pairings?
Ooh, okay. I like 2 because this offers a little bit of wiggle room. So safe answer.
Yeah.
I'm still going with the top 2 in my power ratings. I have Texas and Kansas State as the most likely scenario. You know as well as I do how much we were on Team K-State to the Big 12 championship game last year. We were correct, as we always are. I think they have what it takes to get back there again. As Boots mentioned in the chat, Will Howard is the truth, so something to consider.
As long as he can play TCU every game, Will Howard is the truth.
That's very true.
I think my tweet about that was that Will Howard has a PhD in beating TCU.
He is remarkably good at it. And then the other pairing, because there's a world where Texas just implodes.
There is.
So I think you'd have to sub in Baylor and Oklahoma. I think would be the other 2.
Okay.
Because I think Venables could take that leap.
Yeah. I think my most likely are Texas, Kansas State, I think is a really good one. And then Texas, Oklahoma State. I need to do this. Let's do
Also,
Texas football.
Apologies to everyone in the chat. I did not inhale a giant bunch of cocaine before this podcast recording. I have the sniffles, so that's why I'm unmuting.
I have the sniffles. Look, it's an FCS. Well. It's an FCS game. He's learning, okay? He's pushing boundaries.
I want to hate somebody as much as well hates John Beast Plumlee. That seems really fun.
Mikey Keene Stan over here. Texas hosts Kansas State. So that does make the rematch actually kind of unlikely, but they don't play Oklahoma State. So I like that a lot. But I think that's fair. Texas, Oklahoma State is likely. Texas, Kansas State, pretty likely as well there. Interesting. All right, Grant, what are a couple of who are a couple names, who are a couple folks in the Big 12 that you're excited about? Let's start on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. I think Brennan Presley has a really great chance to be, oh shit, that guy's still here. Player of the year. Yep.
For a real, if I may, a real forgot about Dre season for Brennan Presley.
Yes.
I think,
I'm excited to see what he does. I think he's going to be really explosive for Oklahoma State. He won't win, obviously, player of the year. That'll be Quinn Ewers likely, but I still think he'll be really fun to watch. By the way, while we're talking about this, did you see Jalen Daniels was preseason player of the year?
I did. I think he's very fun. Is that fair? Is that fair enough to say? I don't think that's. Yeah. I think that's situational, and I think it's because he's at Kansas. I'm interested a lot in. So if I had to pick offensive player of the year, if things go right for Texas, it's Xavier Worthy. The offense just goes through him. But what I think will be the difference for a team like Houston is a guy like Matthew Golden. So Tank Dell was there last year. Golden kind of slots in. They have Donovan Smith, who is a little less accurate, but a little more mobile. Can he extend plays and kind of connect with Golden? I think Golden is a guy that's kind of a linchpin for, I have Houston. What is this? 7th, 8th, 9th? I have Houston 10th right now. I don't love it, but if they're going to hit anything like their ceiling, they're going to have that downfield threat. He's a guy that's really interesting to me and a guy that I think is a little bit off people's radars, even as he's, getting notification and stuff. And so he's pretty interesting to me. The other guy that we talked about on this podcast is Aiden Robbins. BYU did not throw to the running back at all last season. Yep. And Aiden Robbins had more touches than all but 3 of BYU's, more receptions than all but 3 of BYU's receivers last year. So he's really interesting to me because again, Keaton Slovis is the quarterback at BYU. I think I keep forgetting that. I'm not saying other people keep forgetting. It's just I keep forgetting that. So that's really interesting to me as well. He's a guy that I really, really like. Anybody else on your radar?
Jatavian Sanders scares me. Especially if everything runs through Xavier Worthy, Sanders is going to find himself in a lot of space really quickly.
Yep.
I should know this, and I'm just thinking about tight ends right now, so this is embarrassing that I've forgotten. Does Kansas still have that one tight end that caught that pass against TCU?
Mason Fairchild, I believe, is still on Kansas's roster. Yeah.
He will do something this year that will make no sense, but will be cool.
I'm actually so low on Kansas because, like, it's kind of like, remember in 2020, Coastal Carolina's offense was like a bunch of red-ass linemen and then
awesome.
Opponents saying, like, what the hell is this? It was great, but they clearly lost the fastball after people kind of knew and there was tape. I'm a little bit worried about that for Kansas's offense this year. Also, am under the impression that, like, last season, people were taking Kansas as a built-in bye.
Yep.
And that's not the case anymore. And so we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'm totally wrong and Fairchild can still do those kind of explosive plays, but I'm a little bit, I'm like sadly pessimistic about them. You know, I'm just like, I think it's going to be less fun than it was last year.
Yeah. I remember we were so high and like optimistic when doing the Kansas preview this summer. And we're like, we're going to get them 6 games, 7 games. And then we go back and look at our rankings and we're like, oh, this team is made up of like sticks. It's not very good. On the defense,
wasn't my favorite. Yeah.
On the defense.
Can I throw two more? Can I throw two more on there just while we're saying names? I think Jared Wiley at TCU is going to be really interesting. Arkansas has got a tight end with like a 25% target share the last 2 years. TCU has never come close to that in terms of tight end target share. So is TCU going to go more run heavy tight end? I think Jared Wiley would be really interesting. He's a guy that I just have circled as if he breaks out, it makes a lot of sense this year. And then another one that I think is worth watching just in terms of like filling shoes for Sean Ward / DJ Giddens. I don't know. I'm not going to make a strong stance about who that is, but like whichever Kansas State running back actually becomes the running back, generally the Kansas State running back room, I think has the potential to run in a situation where they have a decent downfield threat with Will Howard and his passing ability. They have a really good offensive line, but they're not Deuce Vaughn. Can they be explosive? Can we learn about that from them? So I have them circled as well. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball.
Obviously, the answer is Dom Williams, first and foremost.
Dude, love that kid. Yeah, absolutely.
Our big, heavy boy at nose tackle. But I'm really interested to see what TJ Tampa does on the back end of that Iowa State defense. He really is.
Speaking of guys who have been here for 17 years.
But he's like the only dude in the secondary. And he's a really good player, but I'm curious to see like how easily opposing offenses scheme around him, and if Iowa State's able to get him involved on the defensive side instead of the opposing offense just isolating him on one side of the field and throwing him away from him. Because I do think he's really good. I just don't know if he's going to have opportunities to make plays.
Yep, especially with some turnover there, that does make a lot of sense. Of is he just going to get ignored? I'm going to go with Kendall Daniels, Oklahoma State. Again, a guy who's had his name thrown around a little bit. He's on some first team lists, but if Oklahoma State's going to have a big season, he's going to be another kind of, he won't be Malcolm Rodriguez. He's not a linebacker. He's a safety, but kind of a jack of all trades guy who fills in a lot for Oklahoma State. I'm interested in him. I think maybe we're just going to under the radar guys. Sure. But I think he's an under the radar guy that potentially could have a really big season this year.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of more under the radar guys, and I keep coming back to Fig. Josh Newton and Bud Clark.
It's real.
Want to be really interesting, but
because of the equilibrium, right? THT, they just started throwing away from him. They said we don't want to go, and Newton did a good job there. But can Newton get neutralized if the other side of that duo is bad? Utah's third string quarterback just ran it in for a touchdown. Hot damn,
dude. Florida looks awful.
They're not in a good situation. They're not
really
good.
Bad.
They're not good. Another defensive guy for me is Steve Linton for Texas Tech. The coach speak on Steve is that the nutrition program at Syracuse is bad. They beefed him up. He's gained, 20, 30, 50, 100 pounds over the offseason and is going to be able to be a little bit better. But I don't know. A lot of Texas Tech folks are high on Linton and think he plays a really interesting role in Tim DeRuyter's defense. Another kind of linchpin guy for me.
That's my favorite bit of coach speak is, they just weren't feeding him that well. So he just, I don't know. Like, turns out if he just gets the mashed potatoes in the boy, he's fantastic.
Those Northerners don't know how to make stuff stick to your ribs. I've been saying that. Grant, if I've said that once, I've said that a million times. Is Syracuse can't feed nobody.
That's why Graham Mertz looks so terrible at Florida. It's because He's finally like having all these calories just intake into his body all at once.
Nutrition deficient. Yeah, dude.
I know.
Absolutely.
Who else on the defensive end? I mean, special teams. Phillip Brooks is obviously the big name there, but I don't know.
I think it's worth. We already said a TCU defender, but their defense is going to have to be really good for this. Like Bud Clark, is this your year? Like,
buddy, it's been year.
I think we know that like there is no more real estate on Bud Clark Island. You can't get there. You can come by a ferry twice a day, come to our shops, but you got to be off the island before sunset. Buy our stuff and then go home. Don't stay here. Tell everyone when you visited that it was terrible and the weather was awful. But I do think that in terms of the national stage, I mean, he had that interception in the Michigan game, and I think will be a guy that's going to get a lot of national attention this year.
Yeah, for sure. I hope so, because I might flip my property. I don't know yet. I mean, I've been adding on. We just put in a pool over the summer. The values are never higher right now. And I don't know what the Fed's going to do with interest rates. And it's a whole thing, but I might just flip it.
Well, and if I sell that and make a profit, where am I going to live, though? Right? That's the equilibrium. It's just hard. It's a rough.
Nowhere's nicer than Bud Clark Island. You know what I mean? Like, where am I moving to? It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other, players, topics we need to get to?
I mean, we could do the dudes thing. We could do the dudes thing of like naming random athletes, but I think we've saturated on like guys we're interested in. I think there's a lot of interesting guys in the Big 12 here. And
when does Arch Manning take over? I guess is my next question. What week?
Arch Manning takes over. I don't think ever. I think Quinn Ewers takes Texas to the playoff this year. I said it.
Wow. Okay.
Look, the market fundamentals are there. I have never been one to be like Texas is back. This is not just like, oh, it's hype, whatever. It's like, dude, Graham Mertz just hit a guy wide open, way underthrow, but Graham Mertz, Here we go.
There you go, Graham.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some games this weekend. So, varying returns to games. UCF currently smoking Kent State is happening Friday. Kansas opens a debut against the Bobby Petrino-less Missouri State Bears. Grizzlies, maybe? Bears. I think that is the Bears. And then Saturday we get a couple snoozers and 1, 2, 3, 4 interesting games. Couple snoozers, interesting games. So the snoozers are Arkansas State, Oklahoma, Northern Iowa, Iowa State, Texas Rice, Cincinnati, Eastern Kentucky, Kansas State, SEMO, Baylor, Texas State. Even though Texas State's fun. Oklahoma State, Central Arkansas, and BYU, Sam Houston. Sam Houston, who is an FBS team now, not an FCS team.
I always forget
moved
that.
Up.
Yeah.
None of those are really interesting to me and worth, I think, diving too deep into because, look, we're just going to see some reps. I'll probably watch the highlights of all of them. That's about it. There are a couple big ones, and we'll just start chronologically. Colorado does come to Fort Worth. They're playing at the number 17 ranked TCU Horned Frogs. The line currently sits at TCU minus 20.5. The over-under is 63.5. Grant, watching this game, I think it's the only one on the slate that I'm going to watch. What are you taking? What are you looking for in this game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the story is prime at this point. Like, it's impossible for Deion Sanders not to be the story anywhere he goes, at least until we get actual college football underway. I'm curious to see if Morris runs the TCU offense, the new look TCU offense, in a way that maximizes talent around him. Like, I want to see him get the ball to all of TCU's different receivers. I'm curious to see what they do on that end. But this is really just, does Prime have the vibes going at Colorado or not? It's a fascinating experiment, and I'm just curious to watch it for that end more than I am TCU.
Yeah, I think I want to learn more about Colorado than TCU. TCU should win this handily. I don't think we disagree on that, just in terms of talent and cohesion and the fact that it's going to be hot as hell, literally in Fort Worth, and the second half effect is really going to matter there. But Chandler Morris was 13 for 20 with a QBR of 55.1 before he got hurt against Colorado last season. Didn't look good. I think his longest pass was one of those kind of drag routes, where he hit him behind the line of scrimmage, and I think Darius Davis took off there. So I really think that, Colorado doesn't have the roster right now, even with the turnover. Some of their best players, Travis Hunter could play anywhere. Shedeur Sanders could play a lot of places, but like, give me a decent quarterback and an awful offensive line. I think that's really what it's going to come down to. Now, I am interested in how TCU's defense operates against, a team that's going to come out and throw everything. I'm expecting all sorts of nonsense and shenaniganry from this. And TCU doesn't have two linchpins. D. Winters, who, again, linchpin of the defense for the last couple of years, and Dylan Horton, who I think we underrated in terms of his like supreme freaky athleticism and what he freed up everyone else to do. So that doesn't mean that TCU is going to be bad this year on defense. I mean, it does mean, hey, that defense is kind of hanging on by a thread and they're losing two really good pieces from it, and are going to have to replace them with some known unknowns, I think is the way that I would say that.
That's a good way to put it. Although as we, as Boot said in the chat, it's one of the worst rosters. As you said, the talent's not there, but it is an extreme unknown. Like, are they going to gel together? Are there guys on there that we've just overlooked? I don't know. That's why I'm just very curious to see what happens with Colorado. I think they're going to be a fascinating team to watch. Plus, I have a friend who works for Colorado. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, going to be fun. I don't know that we're going to make picks on games that aren't Big 12 games that we have our power rating. So I'm not going to put us on the spot there. I'm not interested in that. I don't think. I just made that call.
I'll tell you what I am interested in. Why is the Tech line so close?
Dude, Wyoming. Why? Okay, you don't just walk into Laramie, right? You just can't walk into Laramie.
No, that's true.
So when there is some change there. Although, can we just be real? This is not even a hot take. This is just objective reality. If I drew a line starting in Wichita Falls, going all the way to Interstate, I think that's 25, straight up Interstate 25, over to Laramie, up again until you hit Montana, all the way over to Iowa, and then all the way straight down. You with me?
Uh-huh.
That's the same part of the country. Lubbock, Laramie, Lincoln, Valentine, Nebraska, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They're the same place. All the same place right there. So not a huge difference for me in terms of, Lubbock's walking in, people from Lubbock are walking in. They just got to drive down the interstate. Realistically, Laramie is just down the interstate from Tech. So it's not like they're going too far, I think.
I went to Lubbock 2 weeks ago for a wedding.
Yeah. I think you texted me and said you could smell it. Yeah, and that's about all I know about Lubbock is you can smell it.
Like the wind had changed, and so all like the cow manure from the farms were just blowing straight into this couple's face as they, on the happiest day of their lives after the reception.
The best thing I can say about Lubbock is that when you're driving through it, you don't need to look at your mileage or your map or anything. You just smell it, and you're like, oh yeah, we're close to Lubbock. I know it's here.
No, it's 30 minutes away. Tech should win that game, even though I do have them ranked pretty poorly. I'm just surprised it's a 14-point spread considering the hype they had coming into the season.
I think Wyoming is not awful. They got a lot of returning production, but they are. They're lower. I'd say they're lower G5. So bet against Craig Bowl at your risk. You're on risk though. I think that's definitely one that was interesting to me. Also, a total of 50 there. Yeah, and so that's 32-18 or something like that. So. Not super high scoring for Texas Tech. I want to go because I think I know which one I think is most exciting. West Virginia, Penn State. Grant, West Virginia goes to Penn State, which sucks. And another 20.5 line, but an over under of 49, which gives you that's what 24, and then you put 10 that's 34-14. Penn State is the implied line, I think, and a half. For West Virginia. Grant, okay, West Virginia, obviously you're hoping to win this game. You're not optimistic that you are as a 20-point dog. What are we looking for out of West Virginia watching this game? I think this is a game I'm going to sit and watch the entirety of this week. I don't know if there's a lot this weekend that I will, but I'm interested in.
I think this is going to be a snuff film. I'm not really too excited to watch this game. I'm not that high on Penn State, but I'm really low on West Virginia. So if they come out and show some fight, okay, that's fine. Like Neil will probably stick around to the end of the season. But if they come over and lay down and it's 49-10 or whatever, like if Penn State is running up the score, it's extremely possible. And I don't want to watch any of it. But I think they need to show like, hey, we know this might be a lame duck here, but we're still going to go out and try. I think Graham, quarterback, will do that, or Garrett or whatever his name is. But curious about the rest.
So is it? Am I watching for like a Garrett Green backdoor cover? Is that like the best I can hope out of West Virginia this weekend? I think that's what I'm interested in. Utah with a bad special teams play. I think they got it. Okay. I shouldn't have games on live while we record this because this is not going to be part. People are going to listen to this later. Okay, yeah. So I think that one's pretty interesting. Grant, the most interesting game of the weekend for me, I think, is UTSA Houston.
I was hoping you were going to say
UTSA -2 at Houston. Grant, have you seen the Houston uniforms? The Oilers homage. Beautiful. Somebody deserves a raise.
A little too close to the SMU Dallas ones.
Well, just cursive script or whatever, but I do like that they have that Houston. Okay, so I will defend in defense of Houston. Houston has worn cursive on their jerseys with Houston long before SMU wore Dallas on theirs. And Houston is doing the throwback to the Oilers. So I agree they're similar, but I think it's probably truer that Houston has more claim to the cursive Houston on their chest than SMU does to Dallas.
Is this the part where I get to say really mean things about Bud Adams? Because if you have 30 minutes, I'd love to sort of tell you the
that's your second podcast there. I'm interested, dude. Our one of the Purple Theory podcast's favorite quarterbacks, Donovan Smith, gets a chance to run the show. They've got, as I mentioned, Matthew Golden. I think the defense is better than they showed last year. Doug Belk, great coordinator, probably will take a job after this year. I think 2 years ago he should have, but after this season will be, upper levels. They are the upper levels. They're in the Big 12.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested in Houston. I took them on the show this week. Again, not gambling advice, but I think that them as a underdog at home is wildly underestimating what Dana Holgerson's got there. I'm really interested to see what they can do with a mobile quarterback who might not be as accurate, but can give you a little bit more big play potential. I think Houston is tabbed as one of the more fun Big 12 teams this year.
Yeah, listen, I'm big meat guy, big fan of UTSA, but I'm shocked Houston is the underdog in this game, especially at home.
Yeah.
Again, not gambling advice, but it's a pretty good line,
and
pretty good value.
UTSA doesn't have Franklin, and they have Clark, and that's great. But they, at times last year, they were like the Emmitt Smith offense to Franklin, just hand it to him, pitch it to him, toss it to him. And so we'll see what they look like. I think Frank Harris is fine, but that back end is a little bit not great. And I think Houston has a decisive advantage in roster. Let's confirm that. We can do that. Houston is 670.25 in team talent composite. And if we go to the CUSA, because these aren't updated, these are partially updated. This is infuriating. UTSA is bad. I don't know. I can't find it. UTSA is bad though.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So it looks like on 247 right now, they have some of the teams updated, but not all of the teams. There we go. UTSA is 574. So Houston with a decided roster advantage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's really good value if you want to get in on that before the line moves, because I would be surprised if the line doesn't move.
Yeah. And we'll do during the season, we have our numbers and we'll just test those out. And we'll keep track of them in a spreadsheet and we'll review them because that's fun. Not gambling advice, just again, fun to look at our perceptions and kind of update them. But, and it gives us a good mechanism for what we're wrong. So a good slate of games. Grant, we hit music, we hit the banter, we hit some interesting players. We had a Big 12 championship. We had power ratings. We hit games this weekend. Anything else on your radar for this podcast, for this inaugural 2023 season kickoff podcast?
No, dude, I think we hit it. I mean, there's all of this college football nonsense going on with realignment, with all this stuff. And as well as you, don't care to talk about any of that. We are here to talk about some fun football games.
Yeah, I'm just ready for football. So I think that's going to be a lot more fun is watching the games than, talking about the potential of which suits pockets the money is going. So
for all the money. Did you see the whole thing with Spectrum and ESPN for the Florida Utah game earlier?
No, some people were saying some stuff about that, and I got a text message, but we were out kind of earlier, and so I didn't see all of that.
Apparently, they're in a rights war with Disney. Spectrum is, and so people couldn't watch. It went dark right at 7 when Florida Utah kicked off.
Oof. That feels vindictive. Yeah, that feels bad. Feels very bad.
Parker, this has been fun. I missed talking
It
to
has.
you.
I'm glad we're back. We'll get into a cadence. I'm going to make no promises about what we're going to do
No, not at
weekly
all.
and all that, but we will be back, and we'll let you know. Try to let you know a little bit in advance. But again, this is a labor of love, and we appreciate doing it, and appreciate you guys with the in my DMs at least. I don't know, Grant. I'm sure you've talked to some folks about kind words and well wishes. We appreciate doing this, and I think the live aspect is fun just because people want to listen to this as a podcast. But 4 or 5 people hop in here and throw in comments. That makes it more fun for us too. So we're happy to do the live show for whoever wants to be here as well. And so this has been the first Purple Theory podcast of the 2023 football season. I'm your host, Parker Fleming, at Stats of War on Twitter. That's Grant McGalliard on Twitter, spelled like it sounds with all those vowels. Until next time, be well, and we'll catch you later.
Adios.